So you're about to go into your first medical, your class 1 medical. This is a medical that every aspiring pilot must do in order to be flight worthy, aviation worthy. There's no way of getting around it. In any country, any state, you have to do this. So stick with me, folks, because it's extremely important that you pay attention. So in order to understand what happened to me, you have to go back to 2022. I booked my medical 2 weeks ago, and I almost ran into a nightmare. But to understand what happened to me, we have to go back a little bit. So in 2022, after the pandemic, I wanted to finance my aviation career and start my go down to London to do my class 1 medical. And now in the UK, used to be under the EASA. EASA is basically the covering body, which covers the EU to this day and certifies class 1 medicals. But since the UK has left the EU, the UK has now is under the Civil Aviation Authority, which is the UK. So I went down to London. I went down to an AMC, that's Aero Medical Clinic, which approves class 1 medicals. Which it was easy peasy. Now, first thing you have to understand is whether if you're going to go for EASA or the CAA class 1 medical, because you can do both, but there's no point. Is basically you have to picture yourself, where do you want to study, where do you want to fly eventually, and where you can legally reside. So if you obviously want to work for Jet2, EasyJet, British Airways, and if you want to be in the UK to be your pilot, then you have to go for the CAA. Easy peasy, you go down, you book it. I will go into detail in another video what to expect in terms of what medical procedures they will do on you. I will go into detail there. This is strictly for the bureaucratic purpose, because this is even more important. So it was easy peasy. You go there and you pay a ton of money, about £600-700, and then they do your medical. And if you're fit enough to fly on that day, just checking, you're fit enough to fly, they will give you your medical on that day. If there's something wrong with you, they refer to a specialist, for example, a cardiologist or a pulmonary expert, and they will assess your situation and take it further from there. Now, if you're going for the EU, and if you want to work in the EU, for example, any carrier like Wizz Air, any carrier that you know that works like Air France, Baltic Air, any of them, then you have to go for an EASA license, which covers most EU countries and some countries outside the EU, such as Switzerland and Norway, I believe. And even in some, I think, like the United Arab Emirates, I believe they also have EASA accreditation as well. So as far as I know, the only company that has both or uses both is Ryanair, because they're based in the Republic of Ireland, and they also have UK accredited pilots and EU accredited pilots. Now now that we established that, in order to know which one you want to go for, you have to consider where you want to study and where you aim to fly. Then the next thing comes up. Now, if we go back, I believe it was 2020 or 2019, unfortunately, there was a horrible incident which took place in Eurowings, where the pilot unalived himself and everyone on board. And because of that, the EASA introduced this rule that pilots, and this is the important part, folks, stay with me here, have to go through a psychological evaluation. Now, the UK, the CAA, also does a psychological evaluation, and so does EASA. However, before we go on, let's stick with this. A psychological is in the code of EASA, so in the book of what it needs to be done. All it says that all aspiring pilots must go through a psychological evaluation, and this happened to me during my CAA accreditation, class 1 medical. But that basically consisted of me sitting with a doctor and him asking me a few basic questions, asking me what I do for work, if there's any history of medical or mental issues in my family, and that was it. Now, before that unaliving of that pilot, that was the case for EASA as well. Now, what happened to me is, when I booked my medical to go down to do my EASA in this medical center in the UK, which was also accredited by EASA establishments under Austria. So Austria looked after this aeromedical center in London, and I explain that in a minute. Basically, what happened is I read through it again. I'm a very thorough guy, so I booked it. I was originally meant to do it in Greece, but for unseen circumstances, I decided to do it in England, London. So what I've done is I booked it. Like last time, I was like, okay, but this time I need an EASA because I want to study in Greece. So I've done this, and I read through it again, and it says there, oh, in order to get a class 1 medical on top of your fitness and your body being checked, you have to check your mental capacity or psychology. Okay, I phoned back this aeromedical center, and I was like, what does this mean exactly? It's like, oh yeah, you have to go to a psychologist. And I was like, okay, is there one on site? Do you have to pay extra? It's like, yeah, you have to pay extra, but we don't have one here, but we can refer you to someone. So I was like, okay, great. I have to find a psychologist in time, book an appointment with him, and make sure that, I mean, I'm not afraid of passing. I've never been to a psychologist, but I mean, the job that I currently have is similar to being a pilot. I'm in transportation with the public, so, and I can, and basically, to get psychologically evaluated, you also need to do cognitive tests. I've done plenty of them, no problem. However, the issue is, well, not issue. So they told me, Frank, you have to get a psychologist. You have to find one on your own. You have to book him. I was like, okay, this seems already a bit, not sus, but a bit amateur. You know, if you are an aeromedical center and your job is to do class 1 medicals, surely you can hire a full-time psychologist to be part of your team, or at least go beyond just a referment. You know, just make sure that you have someone to do this, because this is an extra layer of work that we aspiring pilots have to do in order to pass the class 1 medical. So, okay, fine, okay, I wrote to the guy. Now, what you have to understand is that even though EASA is the overall umbrella who issues the class 1 medicals, and that's why pilots, say, from Spain can work in Germany, and Germany to Spain, and Germany to France, because they have this umbrella covering it. However, the issue is that beyond this umbrella, each specific EU state can add amendments or their own rules. And I pointed out two of the alternative spectrum. Now, Austria, which is also accredits the Aeromedical Center in England, and I don't want to mention their name, and I'll tell you why in a minute, says that a psychological evaluation is not enough. You have to go to a psychologist. Whereas the Republic of Ireland says you don't have to go to a psychologist, but you just have to be evaluated by the medical doctor on the day that you do your physical medical as well. Because the paper says that you have to be psychologically evaluated, doesn't specify that you have to go to a psychologist. Now, overall, this was already a bit suspect to me. And I phoned up and I was like, look, so I phoned up, I was like, okay. No, they said you have to do this. The Aeromedical Center in England said, no, you have to go to a psychologist. Okay, look, fine. What I did was I phoned up a second person, a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. And I said, and this was a very nice guy. Again, I don't want to mention names, again, for obvious reasons. This was a very nice guy. And he told me, look, Frank, I have never done this before. The only time we are asked to evaluate someone psychologically in aviation is if their aeromedical examiner, there's their AME, says that you have to go. Much in the same way that you wouldn't off the bat go to a cardiologist to do your fitness, but only be referred to a cardiologist if they found other issues. The same principle applies to a psychologist, or at least this is what this guy thought. So he said to me, this is strange. I never heard of this before. I have worked with this aeromedical center. I've never done this, never done initial psychological assessment. So I was like, okay, this is already weird to me. How come a psychologist who works with aviation and people who are referred to him psychologically to make sure they're fit to fly doesn't know about this? I was like, okay. So I phoned up a third person, a third psychologist, and this guy was great. He helped me the most. He literally explained it to me so carefully. He says, look, he says, you're the third person, as in I was the third person that was already referred to him by our Aeromedical Center in the UK. And he even wrote it down specifically. He wrote down the clause, he wrote down the amendments in the EASA, in the updated version. He says, look, this is not right. It doesn't make sense to to ask someone off the bat, a student, to go to a psychologist, because that's not really how psychology works. And I'll explain in a minute. And he says, look, I'm going to talk to this aeromedical center for you tomorrow. And this guy was great. He took time without me paying a penny, not a penny. And he says, look, I'm going to have a Zoom call with them. I'm going to talk to them. I don't find this right. It's like, okay, fine. Thank you very much. So I was already, the wheels in my head were turning. It's like, yeah, this doesn't make much sense to me either. I have done psychology in uni for 4 years. And psychology is a soft science. It's not hard science. It's based on qualitative stats, not quantitative stats, like checking up your heart or checking for, say, pre-workout or the sweet Mary Jane in your urine. It doesn't work like that. So you can't just hook you up to a machine and tell you that you're psychologically not there. Like, for example, if I hook you up to a cardio machine, that can tell you if you have heart arrhythmia, and that's a fact. That will come back the same result every time. However, in psychology, which deals with the mind, there's an issue that is called the repetition of results. So every time you measure someone, you may not get the same results, even though all other factors were the same. For example, you could put someone through trauma for a year and that person will get depression. You could put the same person, the next person, through the exact same trauma, but they might be positive and they might be happy that they overcame the trauma. However, if someone has heart problems, and then another person has, for example, if someone takes, again, sniffs pre-workout, they will come back as positive for that pre-workout. And if the next person will have pre-workout sniffs, that person will also come back positive for pre-workout. So the answer is the same, and psychology is not like that. And this guy told me that it doesn't make sense for you to go off the hand to a psychologist. That's not how things work. So first and foremost, I got the psychologist number one, who I got referred to, who says, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do this psychological assessment. This was the person that the Aero Medical Center referred me to. Said, yeah, I'll do it for £250, which is, okay, 1 minute. Then the second guy who I phoned up said, I never heard of this. I only get referred people who are suspected of psychological issues. And the third person actually says, look, not right. I don't even want to do it for you, even if you pay me, because I don't have the equipment to do this psychological test. I don't know what the Austrians want, and I don't find that right. It doesn't work like that. And on top of this, I mentioned before that the psychologist that they refer me to only charges me £250. However, the third psychologist, I just gave his first name out, Mr. Adrian. That's it. He helped me a lot, but I got the feeling that it doesn't really, that he got asked so many times. So I'm doing him as a favor, and I want to do this for you guys. And this is where the issue comes up. If the third psychologist tells me that these tests are usually thousands of pounds on top of the already £700 and £600 worth of medical assessment, but then the first guy charges me $250, it's not that. And again, if the first psychologist is watching or ever finds out, I am not blaming him. I don't think it's a scam. I think what he actually, because I had a word with him, I spoke to him, he sent me over the material that he was going to conduct with me. I think it did look very professional. It did look what the Austrians wanted. However, if the third psychologist tells me that these are usually thousands of pounds, and it doesn't even, and he personally, I'm not saying this, he personally says that he doesn't know anyone in the UK that can conduct this test, and he's not sure what the Austrians actually expect, then I'm skeptical, or at least hesitant, to go and do the psychological assessment with this guy, because I'm afraid that the Austrians will not accept it. Now, and the problem with that is that, so once these people in the British Aeromedical Center that are looked after by Austria say, look, you have to do this, but then I end up doing it, and then I end up getting registered with the Austrian EASA, the issue is they could come back to me if they don't find the methods of the first psychologist. Again, I can't say this enough. I'm not saying it's a scam. I'm just not confident because of these disparities in payment. What if the Austrians don't accept this guy's research and evaluation of me psychologically if the third psychologist says that these tests should cost more and it's not even sure what they exactly want because getting a initial psychological evaluation doesn't make much sense. Now, it's one thing if the Aeromedical Center, which referred me to the psychologist one and is registered under Austria, has referred me to an Austrian psychologist who works for the Austrian state and knows what they want, is one thing, even though it potentially could cost thousands of pounds. However, if for a reason, and I don't believe this again, so I think this guy was legit because after all, the Aeromedical Center is legit. However, if for some reason I get registered with Austria and they don't like it, I am trapped. I could have been trapped almost in a bureaucratic nightmare, and it would have looked so bad if then I would try to go to the Republic of Ireland to get my class 1 medical there, because it looks like I'm shopping for doctors and I'm trying to avoid something, which looks horrible. So at the best case scenario would have been that I would have spent an extra £250 for a psychological evaluation, which I didn't even need in the first place. And the fact that I don't need it is proof because I literally booked a ticket to Ireland as soon as I found this out. As soon as the third psychologist phoned me back and said, look, I had this meeting. I don't tell you. I recommend, the third psychologist told me that you go to Ireland and ask them specifically if you do need a psychologist or just a psychological evaluation from the medic in Ireland. And I phoned up immediately. And they said, no, we had these problems before. We heard of these problems. A lot of people from the UK are coming here to do their EASA because they encountered the same issues. And in a week, I flew to Ireland. I got sick. I put down my £600 and easy peasy, I got it. No psychologist, no hassle, no issues, no bureaucratic problems. Because if you get registered with Austria, it's very hard to go to a different state and it looks bad and potentially could cost you thousands of pounds and potentially delay your flight because you're trapped in this bureaucratic nightmare, which is not your job. You're stuck in this and it's going to delay your flight. If I would have got stuck in this bureaucratic nightmare, the best case scenario would have been that I would have to delay my flight school starting time a month and pay £250, and that's the best case scenario. And the worst case scenario would have been that, apart from outright not being able to get a class 1 medical for the stupid reason, is pay thousands of pounds, negotiate with the Austrians, and get registered to a class 1 medical. And that I don't need that. And the other issue is, which again, I went to this Aeromedical Center before in London, and I don't want to mention their name because they actually are a legit company. I don't want to take custom from anyone. I don't want to take custom from the first psychologist either. Again, the psychologist which they refer me to, I can't say this enough. I don't think it's a scam. I don't believe it's a scam. I was just not confident in it. I was just not confident in the whole thing. And this is why. The Aeromedical Center kept telling me, oh, by the way, if you find another psychologist, please tell us and tell us who so we can refer you to him and we can put him in our system. Now, I ask you, if you go take your car to a mechanic, is it normal that then the mechanic asks you to get the parts for your car that needs replaced? I don't think so. This did not fill me with confidence whatsoever. Because I'm already paying you 800 quid to do my physical, and then you tell me that I need a psychologist, which evidently nobody needs. They chose to register with Austria. They chose to register with a state which requires people to go to a psychologist. So why then I have to do your job, the bureaucratic side of it, and find a psychologist and refer them to you because you're not prepared? I found this really amateur. So the Aeromedical Center in London is a good one. I have done my UK class 1. They were fine. However, in this, they need to get more prepared because we are going to be aspiring pilots. This is already a money-consuming and time-consuming effort, which takes a lot of guts, a lot of money, and a lot of hard work. It's not our job, folks, to go to an Aeromedical Center, find them a psychologist, get them to meet a psychologist, us having to find a psychologist, be clued up on what EASA actually wants, and actually to go through potential bureaucratic issues should poop hit the fan. That is not our job. Our job as people who want to pass the class for medical is to be healthy and shut up and take my money. That is it. And this is why this is a very important video that is so relevant, because I just literally got my Irish class for medical. And you know what, guys? I'm not against psychological evaluation even off the bat. But however, because this psychology is a mental issue, it's not a hard science. And I actually asked the Irish physician, I asked, so how come you guys don't refer us to a psychologist? And he goes, look, people could lie. It is very simple. Because it's psychological, you can fake it. You can't fake drugs in your urine, and you can't fake heart issues. You can fake being a psychopath. They can especially fake that. And the reason why psychologist number 2 and psychologist number 3 said that we only had people referred to us by their AME, that's your aeromedical examiner, is because psychological problems deeply can only be picked up on by when you're already in the school, or at least that is my understanding, already in the school, or you're in a job and someone refers you to a psychologist because they notice something. It doesn't make too much sense to do this off the bat. And again, I'm not necessarily against it, but it doesn't logically follow as much, because again, it's not a hard science. But again, I'm not against it. I am not doubting the first psychologist they referred me to was legit. I was just not confident because he charged too little, and the second psychologist also charged too little. He didn't even know much about it. And the third psychologist outright said it's not right. It's not something that we should be done. It's not something we have to do. UK doesn't do it. Ireland doesn't do it. And by the way, the Irish do a psychological evaluation by a doctor, because those doctors are specialized in with people who want to enter aviation. They ask questions. They actually joke with you. They ask you what you're doing, why are you here, why you want to be a pilot. And that's enough for the first round. It's the same logic that you don't get referred to a cardiologist instantly, only if they find an issue during your examination. The same principle is applied when people do in Ireland and in the UK, is that they don't initially refer you to a psychologist unless you need to go to a psychologist. So guys, I am not, again, psychologist number 1 probably, most likely, is a legit aviation psychologist, but some things I wasn't sure about. The low fee, even though it should cost thousands of pounds allegedly to get this done, and I'm inclined to believe the third psychologist because he got nothing out of helping me. He got no money out of it. So why would he lie? In fact, he turned me down when I asked, can you do it? And it's like, no. And the fact that, look, this aeromedical center in London, again, don't want to mention them because they are legit, they are good, doctors are good, but they were sloppy on this. They were sloppy. They did not put my mind at ease at all. And I thought, well, look, if I can just go to the Republic of Ireland and I can get a class 1 medical, then why should I go to Austria to get a class 1 medical or an AMC that is registered by Austria, when just so I have to pay at least 250, potentially got stuck in a bureaucratic nightmare. It's not right. We are wanting to be pilots. Our time is precious, maybe more than money. So guys, please take this on board before you go for your class 1 medical. Please make sure you know where you intend to work, where you intend to study, and choose the easiest option, of course, legit option, and make sure that you ask what they actually need from you. It will save you money, time, and a lot of frustration. Whew. This is Faustin Frank out.